Hi everyone, I'm Mary Sia, and this is
Michelle Sia.
and today we are here with Dr. Nicole Phillips, a professor in biology at the University of Southern Mississippi. Dr. Phillips, we're so honored to have you here today.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to me.
Of course. Could you tell us a little bit about your profession?
Sure. I am a conservation geneticist primarily. And what that means is that I use molecular tools to study the ecology of very threatened species. So I mostly work on aquatic species. My passion is sharks and rays, but I also work on marine and freshwater bony fish, sea turtles, terrestrial turtles, and marine mammals, and I even have a project on amphibians. So one of the big focuses of my research program is what's called environmental DNA. It's a newer field of study, and it's kind of like CSI because we go in and we collect water samples, and then we analyze those water samples to look for DNA to determine what species have been using that water. And so we then use that data to help conserve species that are threatened with extinction.
So how did you get into this field of STEM, or how did you get into your profession?
So ever since I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I grew up in Michigan, where there's no marine water, obviously, there's just freshwater lakes. But I was always obsessed with marine animals. It started with whales briefly, and then I got into seals, but by about 12 years old, I was stuck on sharks, and I watched every Shark Week, which was better programming back then than it is today. And I just sort of absorbed everything I could and read everything I could about sharks. And then I started my degree in biology, but I just wasn't satisfied, and so I decided to go where there's lots of sharks and lots of shark research, and in my brain that was Australia. So I actually moved to Australia and completed my undergraduate degree, got my PhD, and then I came back to the US, and then I was in Louisiana and now here at the University of Southern Mississippi. So all the classes I teach here are marine focused, and most of my research is in the marine environment. We do work in the freshwater systems too, though.
Teaching, how is that different from being a real marine biologist? Is it similar, or your focus is different?
So really I'm an ecologist. I really am a marine ecologist at heart. That's where my knowledge is. All of my education is really focused in marine. But because my research itself is about using molecular tools, I can use that in other systems as well. So that's why I also work in freshwater. But in terms of my expertise, it's marine.
Mm-hmm. So are there a lot of resources in Mississippi because it's close? Is it close to this ocean? So I know most of the research is in the lab, but do you go out to do research?
Yes, we do. We do a lot of field work. So when I actually came here, I never had plans to develop a field work program per se, because my entire career has been in a lab environment doing lab work primarily. I didn't do a lot of field work as a PhD student. As a postdoc, I did finally have more opportunities to do field work. But it's just so happened, and I'm really excited about it, to give my students opportunities to do field work. We do field work in Mississippi, in Alabama, in Florida. We've done field work in Panama and even Indonesia. And so we're really working all over the world, and I'm able to give students opportunities to go do field work and have these international experiences as well.
Mm-hmm. So what made you decide to have further education after your undergrad?
I was always PhD driven. So ever since I started even before my degree, I was like, I'm getting a PhD because I want to be a researcher and I want to do independent research. And I knew going into college that meant completing all the way up to a terminal PhD degree in order to do what I wanted. Mm-hmm. I was never interested in doing research that was someone else's ideas. I wanted to craft my own ideas and my own research program. And so for me, it was always going to be a PhD. There wasn't really any indecisiveness on my part for that.
Mm-hmm. So how did you decide on being a professor?
That actually happened unexpectedly, because I never wanted to go into academia, and yet here I am. I always wanted to go work for the government, specifically NOAA Fisheries, and that is where I did my postdoctoral fellowship. So after my PhD, I did a postdoc for 3 years at NOAA Fisheries, and when I was there, I realized that I probably wouldn't get the academic freedom in a government position that I would have in academia. So what that means is I didn't want the government to tell me what my research objectives were. If I wake up one day and I'm like, I want to do this, as long as I can get funding for it, I can do that. And so that's why I decided to come to a university. And so I came here in 2015.
Yeah, because I think a lot of students, they are set that they're not going to go back to school after going to school, because like at this point in our lives in high school, we're just like, we never want to go back to school again, even if it's like further education. So after so many years of education, there's a lot of people that just want to get out of school. But I think there's like a lot of benefits, like you said, like if you had a position in school.
Yeah, and it's just the freedom. I like to mentor grad students, so I like to mentor young researchers and help them on their pathway. And so I feel like that is better achieved in academia as well. There's more opportunity and it has the structure for that. So that was important to me.
Yeah, and especially because when you're starting on research, it's really important to have a good mentor. So how do you like mentor these students? What like values do you put into them?
So I have a tendency to recruit women in my lab. My lab has almost entirely been women for 9 years now. I do have some men, but I really have a focus in mentoring and supporting women in STEM because I think it's really needed. And I had a PhD, my PhD advisor was a woman, and at the time I didn't quite grasp how unusual that was, and she used to say things and talk to me about she was the only woman in that department, and so she would say, oh, I'm the token woman, and so like she sort of, I think, helped me navigate tricky situations and helped buffer some things for me. And so when I mentor my students, especially my women, I want to give them every opportunity and push them to take opportunities, and also like there are a lot of barriers that come up. Some are big, obvious, and some are more subtle. And so I really try to instill in my students and teach them about the things I wish I would have known at their age. So things like everything is negotiable. I find that women tend to negotiate less because we feel like, oh, we should just say yes and agree to this, even though something makes me uncomfortable about it. And so that's really what I push them to do, and really teach them, you know, to take opportunities, to advocate for themselves. But I also advocate very strongly for them and their success as well.
Yeah, and I really agree about what you said about negotiating, because right now there's this thing going around, and it's like, one day when I learned to say no without feeling bad, it's over for all of you.
Yes, yes, I love the word no, and I didn't, and it's if I would have known that word, that I could use it 10 years ago, I feel like my life would have been easier. I think, like, especially as women, you know, things might be changing a little bit now, but I feel like when we're raised, a lot of times we're raised to be nice, right? We're raised that it's important for people to like us above everything else, above respecting us, above all these things. And so I think sometimes there is this tendency for us to just agree to things because that's what socially we've been taught to do. Don't argue. don't challenge the status quo, don't be difficult, and things like that. So I try to teach my students, no, it's okay, advocate for yourself. These are things that men have been doing for themselves forever.
Yeah, so like the values you're teaching your students apply to not only STEM, not only the field that they're in, but also like life in general.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I think that's really special.
Yeah, it's something that's really important to me, and it's something that I've been focusing my efforts on more and more. When I first came to USM, I was quite young. I looked really, really young, and I just felt I was like, had major imposter syndrome. Here I had secured a highly competitive job, and when I came here, my immediate thought was, how did I fool them into hiring me? Like, oh gosh, they're going to be so disappointed when they realize I'm not as good as they think I am. Or I just had all this self-doubt. And through the years, I've managed to overcome that, and now I am a confident woman in STEM, and so I think one of the best things I can do is support not only students but other faculty as well who are early career, because it's amazing once you can finally have confidence in yourself how that changes everything for you.
So you talked about like it's important to have someone, like you said, that you try to mentor your students and teach them values. And so I think that it's really important to have a role model in your life, and like it's really important because they can tell you, show you how to be a better version of yourself. So I think that's like really special. So you said that your mentor was a really role model to you.
Yes.
So
yes.
how did she help you? Like.
She's a brilliant woman. And I actually just went back to Australia, I guess it was before the pandemic, and went back to the lab and caught back up, and I remember telling her, I was like, I understand now. I understand everything like that you were dealing with while my advisor. And I remember having conflicts most of the time with men because it was mostly males in the field. But I could just go into her office, and sometimes it was just about talking about it and say, and having your perspective validated and heard as a real experience of, hey, I'm being told that I don't belong in the field because I'm a woman. And, having her support and say, that's not correct. You absolutely belong there. That kind of stuff, even though that might sound small, is really important and really big. So just that, even just talking about it, and having, that validated experience that you're not crazy. Especially if someone's gaslighting you. It's like, no, you're not crazy. This is real.
So you've definitely done a lot of research in your field. So what is your favorite project that you've done?
Oh, it's got to be one of our ongoing projects for sure. I work a lot on what are called the rhino rays. These are sawfish, wedgefish, and giant guitarfish. They are the most threatened sharks and rays in the world, and some of them are the most threatened animals on the entire planet. There was one project in particular, a species was thought to be extinct in Indonesia, and it turned up at a fish market in Singapore, but people had no idea where it came from. And so with collaborators, we put together a grant to go out and do surveys for the species to try and figure out where it exists, if it exists anymore. And so this has been the most challenging project. We're still in the middle of it. We went to Indonesia for 3 weeks last summer. I brought a grad student with me who wanted to have international experience, so I brought her with, and we trained collaborators in Indonesia on how to collect eDNA samples. I don't speak Bahasa, and they didn't speak much English. We did have one local researcher who was a translator for us, but we trained them without having a complete way to communicate. It was very challenging, but it was really rewarding to do that. And tying into this, we were in a very remote part of Indonesia where women don't have the rights and privileges that we have here in the U.S. And I was able to bring on some local women to help with the research, and they were so excited. And so be able to see that and have them participate, and they're going to be co-authors on the paper, is exceptionally rewarding. So we're going to be working through the data analysis in the next year, and maybe we'll find this species, which we know nothing about. That's what we're hoping, but we'll see. We don't know yet.
Yeah. And what you talked about, like being able to teach someone, even if you didn't know their language, I think it's because like STEM everywhere, we have this knowledge, and even if we represent it in different ways, even if we call it different names, it's still like one thing, and it's like science, and
Yes.
I think it's like one language that everyone speaks around the world, and I think that's really cool.
Yes, it is. It was an eye-opening experience. It was, but it was. They always say the most challenging circumstances can be the most rewarding, and I definitely think that's very true.
So, did you like working abroad on this program?
I love working overseas. I absolutely love it. I love working with local researchers. One thing I'm really passionate about is training other people in STEM. That maybe they are scientists. Maybe they're interested in doing eDNA work, but they don't have the skills and tools. So I love going places and teaching them how to do it, especially women. Again, I focus on, if I'm going somewhere, I want to be training women in science, get them in the field. So that's one of the most exciting aspects of the work I do. So we're working across 6 continents right now with collaborators, not Antarctica, but every other continent. I've got collaborators, and I would say the vast majority of them are women. So we're kind of like trying to mobilize this army of scientists to work on these projects together.
Yeah, so you guys are like all working together in
Yes.
different places to do one thing.
Yes,
That's cool.
yes. And I actually have a student from Panama, a woman who's coming in August. We're doing work in Panama, and she's going to come here for 3 months to be mentored by me and learning and integrated into my lab for a visit. So
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
And also, like being a teacher and a professor, or just working in research, you also get to do a lot of traveling, like if you worked abroad.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not just sit in the lab, type on the computer. You actually get to go places and like do it hands-on.
Absolutely, that's one of the perks.
Yeah.
I travel a lot. I teach study abroad classes, and last fall I was on a Fulbright in Chile, and so. But I'm like all about opportunities. So if there's an opportunity, I will take it. I will do it. And that's what I'm trying to teach my students. Like, if an opportunity presents itself, it's really easy to say, I can't because. And instead it's like, I'm going to make this happen, and these are the things that need to be dealt with to make it happen. So having this more optimistic view and taking those opportunities, I think that can really change a person's path if you take the opportunities or not. So
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of times, even if we have like a set goal in mind, there are like opportunities that come along the way, and a lot of people just don't take them because they have a set goal. But like I think if they took these opportunities, maybe they would find another passion or something they're more likely to do. And
yeah, absolutely. With my students in my lab, they have their projects, and I talk to all of them about what their goals are and what they want to do. But one thing is, we have a lot of opportunities that come up. And so, yes, they have their project, which is their priority, but I try to give them and offer them external opportunities as well, to enhance their experience, because obviously that's going to help them at the next step in their career is to have a really solid, thorough CV, which comes from taking those opportunities.
So I think it's like really important for someone to be flexible,
Mm-hmm.
and if there's an opportunity, then they can take it, and not just like, oh, well, I have a goal and I'm working hard towards that goal, which is good, but like, if I feel like they're gonna miss out on a lot of amazing things if they just say no to all of the opportunities that come up.
Yes, and that's one thing I was laser focused as a PhD student. I wanted, and I did do a lot of like peripheral projects, and I got a lot more experience through that. But I said no to a lot of things, and I was just so focused. I wanted to be done. I was finished in 4.5 years, and to me that was the thing. And now sometimes I'm like, oh, why didn't I go do that 2 weeks of field work, and go do whale shark research or something, because I had those opportunities. So I push mine a little bit to within reason. Mm-hmm. It's okay to take opportunities and take a moment to experience things.
So you've mentored a lot of students before and people from all around the world. So if you could say one thing to the people watching this, and especially younger women who want to go into STEM, or they don't know how to, or what opportunities are there, what would you say to them?
I would say to them, find a good role model and a mentor first and foremost, because you're going to need that to navigate the path and to help support you along the line. I think it is important to find a female mentor. It doesn't have to be a formal mentor, a graduate advisor doesn't have to be a woman. There are a lot of men who are exceptional allies for women and recognize, the challenges and support very well. But I still think it's a good idea to have a female mentor who's actually gone through some of the things personally and has that to help navigate challenges. So that's my first piece of advice, is most women are very passionate about supporting other women, for sure. It's just a priority. And so it's okay to reach out and say, hey, I admire whatever it is, or I look up to you for these, respect you for these reasons. Would you be willing to help mentor me? The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid of standing up for yourself when necessary. And because it's also not just about, it is about you, but it's about everyone that comes after you. So like the position I'm in, if I'm raising issues related to being a woman in STEM, whatever platform that is, whether it's in academia or in my particular field of shark science, which is heavily male dominated, I'm standing up for myself, but I'm standing up for every woman that comes after me. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm in the room is because all the women that came before me. So I think that's really important to remember, and to be confident. Like, yes, you are capable, you are smart, you can do it, and just stop being so hard on yourself, because I find women tend to be very hard on themselves, especially when they're young.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was really inspiring.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah, I really liked what you talked about, not doing it just for yourself, but like
Mm-hmm.
you're also doing it for the generations to come,
Mm-hmm.
and you're here because of the generations before you. I think
Yes.
that's really inspiring. Yeah, and to see that one person can have a bigger impact than we think
Mm-hmm.
we can have.
Yes.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it's very true. You can have substantial impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Phillips, for talking to us. We really learned a lot, not just about like your sharks, but also a lot of life lessons that we can take anywhere, no matter what we go into. And I think that's really inspiring.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I also think that this is a really great project. I think that I looked at your website, and I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and you're really highlighting you know, women who are here, because, you know, we are here and we are here to support the next generation. And so I think it's great that you're highlighting the women and the challenges that women face.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.